There are men who are remembered for what they conquered, and there are men who are remembered for what they created. But once, in the heart of a world made of marble and blood, there lived a man who was remembered for something far greater. He was not just a ruler, not just a soldier, not just a name written in stone. He was a mortal who Rome dared to call a god. Yet in the end, when the last torch was extinguished, when the Senate halls grew silent, and the empire he built stood towering over the earth, he died with the same stillness, the same silence as any other man. This is not just the story of glory. This is the story of Augustus, Rome's greatest emperor, the man who became a god, but died like a mortal. In the beginning, Rome was not the eternal marble city we imagine today. It was wounded, shaken, bleeding from civil wars that tore brother from brother and flooded the Tiber with ambition and betrayal. The Republic, once proud and unbreakable, had cracked under the weight of greed and power. The Senate fought for control, the generals fought for glory, and the people prayed for someone, anyone, to bring order back to the world. And from this storm stepped a boy, not a warrior, not a legend, not a legend. Just a young man named Gaius Octavius. His hands were not forged by swords, his voice was not followed by armies. He did not command fear, only curiosity. But fate has a way of whispering to the quiet ones, for this boy carried a name tied to destiny, the name of Julius Caesar himself. And when Caesar fell to daggers in the Senate hall, the world expected Rome to shatter completely. But instead, it shifted, for the boy rose. He rose not with fury, but with calculated grace. He did not challenge Rome by force. He studied it, understood it, became part of its heartbeat. He moved like a shadow, yet every step shaped the future. He won allies not through fear, but through loyalty. He defeated the enemies not through sheer strength, but through patience and strategy. The world thought him too young, too soft, too inexperienced. But a lion does not need to roar to be feared. Sometimes it only needs to watch and wait. And when the moment came, when Rome needed a steady hand, a guiding mind, a soul that could rebuild what had been shattered, the boy did not hesitate. He took Rome's broken pieces and forged them into an empire, not through rage, not through ego, but through vision. A vision where peace replaced chaos, where law replaced fear, where Rome would rise taller than any civilization before it. And the people saw him not as just another ruler, but as the very soul of Rome. Born an ordinary man, forged by history, shaped by destiny, the boy became Augustus, and Rome followed him into eternity. Rome did not transform in a single breath. Empires are not born from thunder. They rise from quiet decisions made in shadows, spoken in whispers, carved into the minds of millions long before they are carved into stone. Augustus understood this better than anyone. He knew that power held openly is power challenged, but power woven into the foundations of a nation. Power that feels natural, power that feels inevitable, is power that lasts. So he did not stand before Rome and declare himself ruler. No, he spoke softly, with humility pressed into every word. He told the people he was restoring the Republic, that he was merely its servant, a guardian, not a king. But in the silence behind those words, he rebuilt the world. He reshaped the Senate until it breathed with his will. He reorganized the legion so their loyalty was not to Rome, but to him. He redeemed the roads, the water systems, the granaries, not for luxury, but for stability, for peace. For Rome had grown tired of war, tired of blood on marble floors, tired of tyrants and heroes who left only ashes when they fell. Augustus gave them something different, something Rome had not known for generations: order, calm, a future. And in return, they gave him something no ruler before him had ever truly held: trust. Cities flourished. Trade flowed across continents. The arts, poetry, sculpture, architecture rose like domes over the skyline of the world. Even the gods, it seemed, smiled again upon Rome. And so the people began to speak of him not merely as a leader, but as a living embodiment of Rome's destiny. Temples were raised in his honor. His name echoed in every province touched by Roman sandals. His face was stamped on coins that traveled farther than any army. He had not conquered the world with the sword. He had conquered it with time, with patience, with the belief that an empire could be more than land and armies. It could be eternal. And as Rome reshaped itself into an empire of unimaginable might, one truth became clear. This was no longer the Rome of the Republic. This was Augustus' Rome. A Rome reborn from ruin into a golden age, But there is a moment in every empire where admiration becomes worship, where respect turns into reverence, where a man still made of flesh and heartbeat is lifted beyond the reach of ordinary life. Augustus did not ask to be a god, but Rome needed one. They had seen too much chaos, too much war, too much blood spilled over ambition. They needed something unshakable, something eternal, something that could not die in a Senate chamber or fall on a battlefield. And so they looked to him. The Senate, those same marbled men who once destroyed Julius Caesar to prevent the rise of a king, now bowed their heads willingly, knowingly, and offered Augustus a crown far greater than monarchy. They called him Divus, the divine, the god who walks among us. Temples rose in his honor, not built by imperial decree, but by the hands of ordinary people. Mothers taught their children to bless his name. Soldiers prayed beneath his statues before marching into war. His image was not merely carved into stone, it was etched into the soul of the empire itself. The world had seen conquerors before: Alexander, Hannibal, Caesar, men who carved empires from blood. But Augustus carved his into memory. His power was not the harsh crack of a whip, but the quiet weight of belief. And belief, once rooted, can outlive centuries. Yet there was a quiet tragedy beneath this glory, for behind every marble statue was a man who could feel his bones ache with age. Behind every festival praising his divinity was a heart that beat with human fragility. Behind every proclamation of godhood was a silent truth he could never say aloud. He was still mortal. He could bleed, he could tire, he could fear the end. And the more Rome worshipped him, the further he felt from the simple humanity he once knew. He had become a symbol, a myth, a god shaped by the hands and hopes of millions. But a god carved by men is still made of stone, and stone eventually cracks. But even the greatest of lights must flicker. As the years passed, the empire stood taller than ever, but the man at its center began to bend beneath the weight of time. The crowd still cheered his name. The army still swore loyalty to his legacy. The Senate still carved his triumphs into marble. But Augustus was growing old. His steps slowed, his voice softened, and behind the golden laurels and purple robes was the quiet tremor of a mortal body wearing down. He had spent his life shaping destinies, commanding legions, bending the very course of history. Yet no emperor, no matter how worshipped or revered, could command the passing of seasons. No power could turn back the shadow creeping slowly across his life. He had seen friends die. He had buried family. He had outlived rivals, lovers, generals, poets, and kings. Rome saw a god. But Augustus saw the cost of eternity, paid in loneliness. Each morning he stood in the forum surrounded by crowds, yet felt the stillness of being utterly alone. The kind of loneliness that belongs only to those who stand too high. He watched the city he built continue without hesitation. He realized something the statues could never reveal. He was no longer shaping Rome. Rome was now shaping him. His face had become an emblem. His voice had become a myth. His life, no longer his own, belonged to his own, belonged to the empire, and still he would. Because he knew something every ruler fears, but few admit. The moment he let go, the world might fracture again. So he tried, not to rule forever, but to ensure Rome would outlive him. He shaped succession, prepared the Senate, strengthened the borders and the laws. He wasn't trying to remain immortal. He was trying to leave behind something that was. For Augustus understood a truth deeper than marble, deeper than power, deeper than godhood. A body fades, a title fades, but an idea, if forged strong enough, becomes eternal. And so the greatest emperor Rome had ever known spent his final years not as a conqueror, but as a guardian, protecting the future from the weaknesses of mortality he could no longer ignore. And then, at last, the day came, not with thunder, not with prophecy, but with silence. Augustus, the man they called divine, the ruler of the known world, the architect of peace, the living symbol of Rome, rested in a quiet villa far from the roar of the Senate and the clamor of the legions. The empire he forged stretched from the deserts of Africa to the cold rivers of Germania. His laws shaped life, his vision shaped nations, his name shaped time itself. But now, Rome's greatest emperor lay upon a simple bed, no marble throne, no golden altar, just a man, bones-weary eyes, soft, heart-slowing. Those who stood beside him expected final proclamations, commands, words carved by destiny. But instead, he whispered something far more human. Have I played my part well? Not the question of a god, but of a mortal soul searching for meaning. And in that moment, the veil fell. The statues, the temples, the honors, they were echoes. But the man, he was real. He smiled one last time, not as Augustus the Divine, but as Octavian, the young boy who once walked quietly through a broken Rome, daring to believe it could be made whole again. When he exhaled his final breath, the world did not collapse. The empire did not crumble. The sky did not weep. Rome stood strong, because his greatness was never in the crown or the worship, but in the legacy he built with patience, wisdom, and quiet resolve. They carried him through the city in a procession of eternal remembrance. Millions lined the streets. Some wept, some prayed, all remembered. And as they laid him to rest, the Senate declared what the people already knew. Though his body was gone, his name is vision, his empire would live beyond death. A mortal life, an immortal legacy. Because greatness is not measured by how one dies, but by what one leaves behind. He became a god in the eyes of Rome. But he died as we all do, quietly, softly human, and that is what made him eternal. Augustus, the man who shaped the world and lives still, in the story time refuses to forget.